So our next speaker is Michael Terzo. He's CEO and board member of HeavyTech Inc. He's presenting Revolutionizing Machinery, a swappable powertrain for flexible emissions compliance and market adaptability. Founder and CEO of Zero LLC and director and board member of HeavyTech Inc. Michael is a visionary engineer and industry disruptor with over 25 years of experience in fluid power engineering, manufacturing and entrepreneurship. He's driving a new level of innovation and efficiency in the off-highway industry by completely rewriting the rule book and taking a first principles engineering approach to the heavy-duty space. So look forward to your presentation. Welcome, Michael.
Cool, thank you. Man, it's awesome when you write your own bio. Sound awesome. That was a great presentation by Vanguard. I actually remember being one of the earlier hydraulic distributors to call them up way back in the day and say, man, we need some electrification solutions in the hydraulic distribution market. And actually yesterday I was trying to start a pressure washer after it's sitting all winter. And I literally wanted to throw that thing away and call up, Briggs & Stratton and say, what's coming out on that front? I need a pressure washer that's battery electric. So that's a driver that I think we don't talk about, is that, man, small engines can be frustrating. So anyways. All right, Mike Terzo. So I am co-founder and CEO of HeavyTech. HeavyTech is a startup. I've sort of done my whole world in startups. But we are a startup actually trying to develop off-highway equipment that is hybridized and electrified. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're approaching this swappable powertrain, how we think that can help really advance the industry, how it can give flexibility and adaptability to a lot of stuff that's going on today. And I'm just going to go over some of this pretty high level. So like I said, I've lived in the startup world for 25 years. My first company actually was in the pool lift industry. But then really of note is when, right before actually 2014, I worked for a full-line Parker distributor, and I got to go out to all of these OEMs, all of these manufacturers, and really see all of these issues in how we design hydraulic systems. And I said, you know what, I think I can do that better. I think there's some missing pieces in what I saw was coming in electrification, in fluid power, but really off-highway, on-highway, industrial machinery. It's all the same from a fluid power perspective. And I started Terzo Power Systems to solve what I saw was we really know that we can do some different architectures in hydraulics. How do we make that cost effective? I think almost everything in my career has been how do we make a cost effective solution for these industries? And that was a fun journey. I took that from an idea in my garage to being literally a tier 1 supplier to some of the largest truck manufacturers on the planet. And it taught me a lot about the, I guess, mobile industry. There's a lot of similarities, obviously, with commercial on-highway and off-highway. We deal with a lot of the same issues. But what we did was I looked at the fact that we were electrifying commercial truck chassis, and nobody's talking about these little things called auxiliaries. It's great that you have big, sexy batteries and powertrains and e-axles and all this kind of stuff, but I saw okay, there's nobody talking about all these little things that we need to actually power some of this equipment. And I focused on those auxiliaries. I say it's sort of walking between the toes of the giants. It just happened that there was no way to power your steering system on commercial trucks off of an 800-volt battery bus. With hybridized and electrified fuel cell, all these. Turns out the engine is either not there or not running. And it was interesting because we really solved some issues on a global scale that didn't exist. There was no, when we first commercialized our line of smart electrohydraulic pumps, there was no other solution. So we went on a pretty crazy journey of supplying some of the largest truck manufacturers. But what I did, my heart's actually in the off-highway market. So I looked at that and said, okay, that's awesome. I sold that company 3 years ago and said, I'm going to focus on the off-highway market because I think the off-highway market is actually one of the best markets to electrify because we primarily deal with hydraulics and hydraulics. It's a sort of a black art, and you have to come up through hydraulics to understand hydraulics and understand the intricacies of it. And I said, hey, we can really change the game and how we're powering off-highway equipment. I'm going to make a caveat. Most of what we do is sub 200 horsepower. The game changes once you get above 200 horsepower, give or take. We really focus on, say, 25 horsepower up to, maybe 150, maybe 50,000 pound machines on an excavator. That's what we see we can really change on an architectural front. And it was interesting. So I know there's some OEMs in the crowd here, but what I started seeing was it wasn't just risk aversion. It was sort of like, we don't want any risk. We actually don't want to take a risk in new power architectures for a lot of reasons. I have my own thoughts on why that is, but it really just seemed like, okay, a lot of the OEMs, they're not quite getting it. They're not quite understanding that we have to address a complete rethink of the architecture, starting with the hydraulics. And so I got together with a bunch of people in the industry and said, hey, we're gonna start our own OEM. And that is based around the fact that we're gonna do this swappable powertrain. So 15 years ago when I started in the electrification world, really saw that there wasn't a lot of tools, there wasn't a lot of stuff out there. We're in a totally different environment now, right? We have mature tools. We have on the electronic component level down to the MOSFETs and everything. We have a lot of tools out there now that we can use. We've been through that hype. We've been through the bubble now. Now we are in a completely different, both political, but also technology landscape. And now everybody's saying, okay, we know the power of electrification. We're not trying to tell people like, hey, there's more torque, there's more, all of these great benefits of electrification. I think everybody understands that, but now everybody's saying, hey, we need a practical path forward. How do we do that? How do we have a practical path forward? Regulations and I guess standards to a big extent, they're behind and they're trying to catch up. It depends on the country by country, state by state. I was actually in California for 12 years. I worked with CARB and the California Energy Commission a lot, and yeah, they're really behind. We have to actually lead the industry with technology. And because of all of this, OEMs are really facing a lot of confusion. And I can't speak. I'm not a OEM yet. I mean, 6 months. Actually, we're a 6-month-old OEM. But they don't like risk. So risk means we don't really know what to do. I think any business doesn't like risk because we want to be able to say this is what 1 year, 2 year, 5 years down the road looks like. And I think that's why a fuel and power agnostic powertrain makes a lot of sense going forward. Because what it allows us to do is really look at this and say, we're gonna design once. And obviously it's not once, but you're gonna design a lower number of times. For a platform, I think we can actually design pretty much once for a whole bunch of different fuel options. And this is gonna de-risk a lot of stuff in that development cycle. And that's really going to enable OEMs to say, okay, we can now look at this market totally differently because we don't have to take our industry lives and dies by application, right? We look at the application, especially from my side coming up through distribution. Everything's about the application. What is that machine doing? What's the application? And how do we fit our solution, our technology solution to that application? I don't think we can do that because electrification, there's just too many different regulations, standards, certifications. There's just too much going on. And because there's too much, we all sort of just freeze. So we've really been working on how do we actually, we solve that problem, because ultimately HeavyTech, we want to make vehicles, right? But we actually want to be a vehicle that is a vehicle for demonstrating and validating powertrain and software architectures. That's ultimately what I want to do in the industry, because I know that we can actually make step changes forward in the powertrain side, but I think we have to demonstrate that to the whole industry. So for example, if you're selling into California or the Netherlands where they have a zero emission construction mandate, you plug in the battery, you plug in the BEV module. If you're selling to a landfill that might have a cogen and a CNG available, pull out the battery module and stick in the CNG hybrid engine module. And then for a lot of applications, it's going to be a diesel hybrid, just because that gives you so much flexibility on all fronts. And what this does is, or what we have to do is we actually have to, modular can be a pretty bad word. It's really hard to do something, all things for all people, all designs for all applications. I'm never saying that. I like the 80-20 rule. As long as you hit 80% of the applications, you've already won. But we really do have to look at the vehicle design completely differently. You have to have drop-in compatibility across all these powers. So we're truly fuel and power agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's a battery, if it's a diesel, if it's a renewable diesel, just because of the complexity of that in everything we've been hearing today. But probably, maybe even most importantly, is a unified software system. So something we've always struggled with in my world is you're looking at all of these discrete components from all kinds of different tier suppliers, and you're making them all talk, you're updating them all differently, you have different security. Actually, we have virtually no security on off-highway. There's just no unified system. And I would actually present to the industry that standards will never be able to keep up with what's been going on for the last 10 years, and it's only going to get worse. I mean, we haven't even talked about AI yet. I really think that standards as we know it, if we're focused on trying to get standards up to speed, I don't think it's going to happen. So we do need to collaborate. I'm all about collaboration, and I think there's a lot of ways to do that. But a unified software ecosystem and operator interface for a flexible power platform, powertrain, is super important. And ultimately, everything has to cost less because we are integrating more expensive hardware. No matter what, electric stuff, batteries, everything, it's more expensive. So the great thing about electrification is we can rethink the design of the vehicles. We can pretty much rethink everything, and we can actually reduce the cost quite a bit. So, this is interesting. So I actually had AI make this entire presentation, so I didn't even know it was going to not pop up some of this stuff. I'm not kidding. Okay, so yeah, I was expecting all that. So what we're trying to say to the industry and what we're doing internally is that you have to take a holistic view of the software and the powertrain. We have what we're calling an e-engine. We have a main battery. You always have a battery in the system, whether it's hybrid or battery electric, but then you get to choose your fuel source. And those three components make up this flexible powertrain that I'm talking about, because the power source is what you swap out. You actually don't swap out the e-engine, you don't swap out the main battery, you swap out your power source. And what that does is it allows you to meet any of these different markets. You can go after all kinds of stuff because now you are truly energy and fuel agnostic. But you really have to build a software architecture that allows for that. What we did is we looked at all of the use cases all of the best practices in automotive, military, defense, aerospace. And this is something where AI is absolutely insane. I actually have every single standard certification subject matter expert at my fingertips, 1 second away. And you can actually say, okay, if I'm an expert in my domain, I can actually grab all these experts and we can do really exponentially more advanced development of a lot of these systems. And so we're developing the software. We actually said, okay, what do we want? Well, I think the automotive is using domain-driven software. They're doing that for a lot of good reasons. So let's look at that. Let's look at an electrified platform and say, what are the domains on that from a software perspective, and break that down. So you probably can't see it, but we do have powertrain, we have autonomy, we have our sensor suite, we have our power gen side. We've broken that down. I think there's So yeah, actually you guys can read it better than I can. So we broke it down into these domains for an electrified off-highway vehicle, and then said, okay, we got domain driven. I think that's really important. What's the other basis of the software that we need in off-highway? And here's something else I would actually put to the industry is an on-highway. So when we first started our electrohydraulic pump and we were selling it to the OEMs, they were saying, okay, are you ISO 26262 compliant? That was the first question out of every single OEM's mouth. And we said, no, we're not. They're like, okay, we won't talk to you. We'll, see you later. And I would tell my engineer, I was like, oh, they'll be back in a couple months. Because I knew there was not one single component out there that was functionally safety compliant for a high voltage steering pump. It wasn't out there yet. So I knew that, okay, yeah, we don't have it, but we also have a roadmap. And almost every single OEM, if they didn't understand that right off the bat, they came back to us and said, okay, yeah, we'll work with you. We'll work with you on that roadmap to get you to that functionally safety compliance. I look at off-highway and say, every single function, every work function on any off-highway vehicle, I'm just going to assume can kill me. Therefore, every single work function, every single function, even you could say thermal management. If the battery has a thermal runaway and we're not actually managing the thermal managements of that vehicle, I think that's a safety critical part of the vehicle. So we said, okay, across our entire software architecture, we're just going to say everything's functionally safe. We're going to approach. We're not just going to say we're going to break it into steering and braking. We're going to say everything is going to kill you and has to be safety critical. And we're going to take it one step further. We're going to say everything is ASIL-D or SEAL-D, whatever you want to call it. There is nothing for the off-highway industry. So we're just saying that fourth level that is, we need to be able to hit that target. Now, we're not doing anything that's that right now, but we know that's in our roadmap. We know a hardware fault tolerance of 1 is in our roadmap. We don't have to hit that right now because you're going to be way ahead. But the tools that we have now to actually look at our powertrains on off-highway are just staggering. And built for autonomy, future-proof, obviously built for off-highway. So all of this stuff, we took this holistic view on how we're developing our software architecture and said, now we're going to bolt that onto this powertrain side, which just encompasses these 3 components. And now we have something that is, applicable to most off-highway vehicles, because it really doesn't matter if you're running an electromechanical linear actuator, a mechanical motor, if you're running an electrohydraulic system, none of that matters because now we have a system that can be scaled up and down. So just why that makes sense from just a practical application is if you're a contractor, especially say a small contractor, you have limited assets to deploy, right? You can only buy so many vehicles. It's been the chicken or the egg in our industry. I don't think a lot of contractors are going to want to buy a specific electric vehicle at a higher cost if they don't know exactly what their ROI on that vehicle is going to be. And the reality is usually they don't know. They don't know how they're going to apply it. Maybe if you're in some applications where you can cost that out on how you're bidding a project in San Francisco where they have a noise ordinance, or you can work earlier in the day or something. But you don't know. So you're going to go with a diesel hybrid or a gas hybrid. But then you can actually say, hey, there's a project coming up. I can use the same assets. I know I can bid it the exact same way I do everything. I know what my cost of ownership is. I know how to bid that project with my assets. I don't have to worry about, okay, I can't bid this, or I have to come in later on the job because I can't get in at 6 o'clock because you can't run loud equipment. So it allows them to actually be compliant to the application, which again, we have to be able to be flexible and adaptable in the market because every single market's different. So that's sort of what we're doing with our HeavyTech architecture. It gives us a very purpose-built system that's specifically built for the off-highway market and the intricacies and the insane duty cycles that we see from sitting idly when you're sitting building a trench and you're literally holding a piece of pipe up, for the guy and you're talking to him half the time, to when you're running a cold planer or something, or you're going full bore, you're using every single horsepower that you have 8 hours a day. And once you get into the bigger stuff, obviously 24/7. We look at not just field serviceability, but we take the right to repair actually pretty seriously. It's a hot topic, but ultimately it actually shouldn't even be a topic because if something's down, they should be able to fix it. That doesn't mean that they should be able to crack open an inverter and start messing with the MOSFETs and everything, but they certainly should be able to understand how to get that vehicle up and running in a lot of different ways. So we feel engaging that part of the market is really important because that's actually going to help the whole industry. You unleash the farmers and ranchers on electrification, and it is going to be fun. I can guarantee that. So. And then back to the unified control software, diagnostics, updates. instead of having to deal with, and we dealt with this a lot on the commercial truck side, is every single supplier has their own structure to update their firmware. And then ultimately it's up to the OEM to decide what kind of risk they want to deal with and what kind of reward they're going to get for allowing you to update that. And it was a disaster. I'm pretty sure it's still not really figured out. We do need we need a safe, secure way to do over-the-air updates for all off-highway, not proprietary. So we're actually promoting a completely open source side of that because that's something that will lift the whole industry up. It's a little bit against the grain, but. And then that really allows us to be ready for all of the global complexities of compliance, emissions compliance, certification, standards, safety, you name it. And I think this is a very smart pathway because it allows us, this is something that I think back in the hype of the EV craze when we were in California, like I couldn't really say. We couldn't really say like, you know what, hybridization is a path. It's a pathway, it's a stepping stone for a lot of applications, and it gives us immediate up to 80% emissions reductions, 80% fuel savings. We need to grab that. We need to grab that right now because we can do it right now. And I think that's something that the whole industry, certainly the powertrain part of the industry has to jump on. And then you use BEV where it makes sense. I do think, like David's presentation, I think almost everything under 20 horsepower is going to be battery electric. Maybe not everything, but 80% of the market, it just makes sense. My Milwaukee drill, I would not trade that in for anything else because it's a beautiful product. And then OEMs and the customer, they don't have to pick a side. So I got a little bit of time, right? Okay, so what that really means in the end is speed, flexibility, and market adoption, and adoption, because we can't be in a chicken or the egg situation because we know what the technology, we know what electrification can do. Electrification always means hybridization and battery electric, so I always make that, I think I'm a little gun shy from living in California so long that if you say electrification, it means zero emission or nothing. We're not in that ecosystem on the off-highway. Just the same reason why most taxis are Priuses. Once every taxi is a Tesla, that's when that electrification technology has reached critical mass, and it's pretty easy to look at. We look at the off-highway same as we look at a forklift business model. They're all electric because that makes the business money from day one. So. And fewer unique platforms. This is critical. We have to have commonality across these platforms because I think we're probably the worst offenders in the off-highway industry of every single platform, every single vehicle size. You have mini excavators, mid-size. Every single one has completely different supply chains, completely different systems, and that means we're stuck in low volume. And electrification actually allows us to jump into high volume. Maybe like commercial trucking, 50,000 EAU plus, but that completely changes our cost structure. But we have to have fewer unique platforms. And then specialty, this is maybe not so much in the on-highway. This is actually, I think, AI actually put that in there, and I would have erased it if I was paying attention, because that's more for commercial trucking. So yeah, it allows us to be future ready. So this one isn't even very interesting. I'm just going to leave you with this quote, which I think is the truth. The future of heavy industry won't be powered by a single technology. It will truly be shaped by flexible, smart, and adaptable platforms. So I think that's it. Yep. And so I just want to open it up for questions. And if you guys have any questions or hit me up afterwards, I'll be here tomorrow too. And yeah, that's it.